Yeah. How would you two rate President Trump as a political analyst? When he talks about national politics, presidential politics, how would you rate leave the humor quotient aside, but in terms of quality political analysis, how would you rate him, Elizabeth?
I'd say for current day, he's probably one of the best because
What?
for someone who is a billionaire from New York City, he understands the mind of the average America better than
Yeah.
99% of politicians and most people.
And Stephen, when he critiques a Democratic politician, do you think he's generally doing it in a political way to score points, or do you think it's an honest critique?
Both, I mean, definitely, it's very political. It's dripping with
Yeah.
politics, but it's done with strategy. He
Yeah.
he kind of identifies who he wants to put down a little bit. But to your point about analysis, he is very skilled at identifying a person's strengths and weaknesses and exploiting the weaknesses.
Yeah. All right. Here's political pundit Donald John Trump on Air Force One today, doing some color commentary on a prominent Democrat. And afterwards, I want you to tell me, first Steve and then Elizabeth, do you think he really means it, or he just, saying it for some other reason? This number six, please, Sam.
You took a kind of a little bit of a swipe at AOC today, and I was just
Well,
wondering.
her performance was horrible. I was surprised, actually. I didn't know she was stupid.
So, how would you have answered the question that she was asked about whether the U.S. should support Taiwan if they're ever attacked by China?
Well, I would have just said that it's none of your business right now, because I wouldn't answer that question anyway. I wouldn't respond to a question like that. That's war. When it comes to war, you don't talk about your strategy. She could have done that very easily. She had no idea. I don't think she knew what Taiwan was. That was the problem. But you don't talk about military strategy. So could have taken an easy pass on that one. That was not a good answer. Could be death-defying, because I suspect that'll be used in every campaign for the next 30 years against her.
He misused the phrase death-defying, but otherwise, I took his point. Stephen, do you think he means that, or you think he's being hyperbolic for showmanship?
I think he mostly means it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Elizabeth, who would you guess Donald Trump thinks would be a formidable Democratic presidential candidate of those talked about?
Gavin Newsom, for
You did.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's very strong. He's been around forever. He's a brilliant debater, and I think he knows that he's taken seriously, and he knows AOC, for example, is very much not.
Yeah. Um,
I just wish building on my point about the hype machine, I remember when AOC was first elected and I was working with a lot of young members of Congress and the freshman orientation and all of that. And there is such a big emphasis on comms. It's all about communications. Policy is completely secondary. That's fine for a period of time, but eventually that's going to catch up to you. And that's what happened with AOC.
Interesting. Um, what would you say? Again, just I know you're speculating, or I assume you're speculating because you don't know. What would you think he would think of Governor Shapiro? Do you think Donald Trump would see him as a formidable candidate?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Why?
so. I think he A looks at Pennsylvania and his approval ratings, but B, governor's a real position where you have to govern, build coalitions, get things done. Pennsylvania is obviously not just a purple state; it's probably the most important purple state right now. And you can see in the way that he carries himself as a communicator, as a leader, there's gravitas there, and I think Trump recognizes that. In the same way with Mamdani, he recognizes game.
Elizabeth, do you think Donald Trump's impressed with Governor Shapiro?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Steven said, he does recognize game. He appreciates anyone that's been remotely successful at this. He knows that politics is difficult and he appreciates anyone that wins. I think he would remind the world that a Democrat who is proudly Jewish and a Zionist is not going to win,
Yeah.
because that's something Republicans are going to keep talking about, because I believe that's what happened in 24 with that VP choice. But in general, I think Donald Trump takes people seriously that have support, and he likes that about people. He likes the fact that Gavin Newsom, despite all of the mistakes he's made, seems to have support, and game recognizes game.
Yeah. News tonight, Democrats have chosen the person who's going to deliver the response to the State of the Union address. It's a new governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger. Elizabeth, as you know, well, it's a difficult job. Very few people have given effective responses to a presidential address. So my first question to you was, what do you think of the choice?
It makes a lot of sense. The narrative around her is that she's a female, obviously, but she's a moderate and she won in Virginia and she did better than was expected. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, Stephen, I assume you'd be enthusiastic about this.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes people do it in a studio, TV studio. Sometimes they do it from with an audience, like in a in an arena in a theater. Sometimes they do it from like their living room or their kitchen. Elizabeth, if your client was giving the State of the Union response, what would be your preferred venue?
I think if you're responding to Donald Trump, it's hard enough as it is. Don't do it from the kitchen table. You do it proudly and you make it as big as possible to try and get on the same level as Donald Trump.
But like do it in a theater?
Do it in a theater and make sure you have plenty of people ready to
Yeah.
applaud every single,
Yeah.
good line that you have in there.
Stephen, no one's ever done it in a 30,000 seat arena. What do you think of that idea?
I personally love it. I remember when Joe Kennedy III did his response, he tried to get people there and have that live sort of energy with the audience. It wasn't that big,
Yeah.
but I love that kind of thing. My biggest thing with these responses is to be as authentic as possible. So if you think you do well in front of a lot of people and that brings out your best, then absolutely you should do that. But that's not everyone, and I'm actually not sure that it is Abigail Spanberger.
Interesting. I have a new video to show you. I'm going to send to my colleagues. Guys, want this one as soon as possible. Uh, I want to ask you about crypto, the crypto industry spending money in this campaign. Meta is spending money. They're not strictly a crypto company. I mean, not crypto, AI, sorry. They're not strictly an AI company. Crypto spending too, to make sure they get candidates elected who support their agenda on both AI and crypto. Stephen, I know you're someone who's concerned about special interest money in the system. As a Democrat, are you concerned that a lot of that money is going to go to Republicans? And do you think that industry's spending will somehow distort the election?
Oh, definitely. It will and is and has. And I think one of the ways that Democrats can shake up the political culture over the next couple of years is truly becoming the anti-corruption party. A couple of voices like Ro Khanna and John Ossoff have started to try and carry this mantle. Banning lobbyists from contributing to members of Congress is a big position I've called for. But even short of that, banning these corporate PACs or those contributions, I think it's a great thing. Stopping the insider trading. There's a whole agenda there that Democrats can actually champion. Republicans can and should too, to be honest. I hope it's a bipartisan thing.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I want to show you this. I reported yesterday that 2 nights ago, the president's political team briefed many of the cabinet members and their staffs about the midterm strategy. They talked a lot about what the Republicans are going to run on, and they said to the cabinet, we think Democrats primarily are going to run on a stop Trump message, that if you want to send a message to Trump, if you want to be a check on Trump, you got to vote Democratic in the midterms. Here's a new ad from a Senate candidate in Illinois, Juliana Stratton. It's her first TV ad of the campaign. She's in a contested primary for the Senate seat, and Dick Durbin's retiring. And here's a real life manifestation of the anti-Trump message that people in the president's camp believe Democrats will be running on.
Trump. Vote Juliana.
Fuck Trump. Vote Juliana.
Fuck Trump. Vote Juliana.
They said it, not me. I'm Juliana Stratton, and I'm proud to have lived my whole life on the south side of Chicago. I'm not scared of a wannabe dictator. I'm running for Senate to stand up to Donald Trump. I'll abolish ICE and hold Trump accountable for the crimes he's committed. Just like they said, fuck
Trump.
Fuck Trump.
Fuck Trump.
Vote Juliana.
That's why I approve this message.
All right. So if you didn't notice, or if you're listening to the podcast, one of those voices is the current other senator from Illinois, Tammy Duckworth. I have mixed feelings about that. I'm not offended in general normally. I thought those would be bleeped, to tell you the truth. And I don't know if that'll play on broadcast TV. I don't like the coarsening of our culture. I don't like disrespect for the office of the presidency. But Stephen, I know full well that a lot of Democrats will see that ad, they'll remember it, and they'll like it. And that's just a fact.
That's right. That's right. Works well in a primary to some degree. But I also think, to be successful electorally, especially in a general election, you have to be able to motivate a broader array of voters. I think the F Trump stuff is super easy. It's cheap. and lacks in imagination, lacks in, skill, in my opinion. And so, I think it's like getting a sugar high. She'll probably raise some dollars off of that, might get a little bit of a boost. I'm not sure long term it's effective.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I now see in the NBC story that has word of this ad that very cleverly they're releasing it without the bleeps, but when they air it on TV, they'll bleep out the F word. So they kind of get the best of both worlds. Elizabeth, what do you think Donald Trump would think of that ad?
I think he'd laugh. I mean,
Yeah.
he knows how people talk about him. Like
Yeah.
Steven said, it's very cheap. Donald Trump likes to actually be challenged in some way. This is not that clever, and we'll probably raise a few dollars, and that's kind of it. I don't think this works
Okay.
ever.
It's distinctive.